Hello, fellow cognizant manlets. It's been a while. This is the Cognizant Manlet reporting. Just pouring myself some tea. I want to touch on the recent controversy surrounding the YouTuber Jesse Ridgway and his wife's termination of their pregnancy because the fetus, or baby, however you want to call it, was diagnosed with Down syndrome. Now, I'm not going to get into abortion. This video isn't going to be about abortion per se. It's more about the hypocrisies and the inconsistencies from the pro-lifers. And I've noticed a lot of pro-lifers, because a lot of them are right-wing or even far-right. And yes, you have pro-lifers on the left as well, or, pro-lifers who are just simply moderate centrists or apolitical. But, if we're going to be frank, most of them are right-wing. They're ultra-conservatives, they're very religious, etc., etc. And, these are the same people who are now complaining about this recent abortion from Jesse Ridgway. They're now labeling it as eugenics. If you unalive or abort a fetus because it's defective, it's been diagnosed with some type of disability, that's just eugenics. Like what this guy here says, Reform to Rome. Killing your child because they are disabled is eugenics and horrific. This is a litmus test on whether you should be jailed. So now these are the same rightoids, pro-life rightoids, who pedestalize tall men, tall, attractive men. They almost always vilify and denigrate and inferiorize short men. I've dealt with many of these types of pro-lifers. I used to be a pro-lifer myself, a pro-life right-wing Christian type. And especially the ones on the far right, like the white nationalist types, who were pro-life, in other words, just to put it shortly, is that they are eugenicists themselves. They defend female selection. And I'll show you some comments as well of the hypocrisy. They defend the outbreeding of short/ugly men. If you asked a pro-lifer, would you rather your son come out tall or short? They're going to say tall. 100%. If you ask a pro-lifer what's better, to be tall and facially attractive, or to be short and ugly, like in terms of health, they're going to say, being taller and better looking is a better sign of health. And they're the ones who perpetuate all this, tall men have higher IQs and, they're more athletic and they're more kinder, gentle giants. That's all eugenics. Or at least it's all what enables eugenics. What justifies eugenics. And again, they aren't eugenicists because a lot of them, and again, I'll show you comments very soon, a lot of them literally admit that they want to outbreed short and ugly men. They don't think humans should be short and ugly. They think, society should contain tall, aesthetic men and women, I guess, but they mainly target men. Now let's look at the comments. I hope I'm making sense. Now they're against eugenics all of a sudden. They're for it. Okay, even if they don't necessarily claim to be eugenicists or pro-eugenics. One way or another, they're still pro-eugenics. That goes for everyone. I'm not really pro-eugenics myself, and I'm going to make a video on eugenics. But at the same time, I'm a little eugenisty when it comes to certain things. Like, I don't think criminals should be reproducing. I don't think degenerates, extremely deviant people should be reproducing. Like Bonnie Blue, who's pregnant. She should have had an early term fetus deletus, in my opinion. Or should have just been sterilised. But, the same people who want short and ugly men bred out of existence, the same people who inferiorise us and dehumanise us as being dysgenic or unideal and whatever, they would be against all that. They would be against sterilising someone like Bonnie Blue or aborting defective feti. But anyway, let's look at the comments. They straight away contradict themselves and prove my point. Okay, so you got this comment here. I'll give some time for you to read it. So, unaliving a child because they are disabled is eugenics, yada, yada, yada. Then I reply, do you support women selecting early torment? And then this fool, David Messick, writes, can women kill short men? But it's not just always, eugenics isn't just about unaliving or genocide. I will admit there's no agenda to unalive and genocide short men yet. Not yet. And that's maybe for another video of my predictions. But there's definitely a sentiment and an encouragement and justification to breed out short/ugly men. And yes, these Christian pro-lifers, not just Christians, all pro-lifers in general, the right wing, they're part and parcel as well. Not all of them. A lot of them might backtrack and be like, oh no, I have nothing against short, ugly men reproducing. But they only do that just to save face. The ones I've dealt with, which has been, 80%, 90% of them, have always supported an aesthetics-based eugenics, even if they were against abortion. But anyway, continuing on with the comments. Sorry if I sound weird. I've got a bit of a stuffy nose because it is freezing here. So I sound like I'm slurring and mumbling my words a bit. Okay, and then I replied to this guy who, has to bring up, if short men are being genocided, because he thinks, that's going to counter my point. And I said, if they can determine that the fetus will be short, most certainly. A lot of people would. There were women on some forum, a member from our Short Guys posted these comments from these women. I think it's the Girls Ask Guys or something. Some girl, the forum is named, the forum's name is like Girls something. I don't know, anyway. They were admitting that, they would, if they knew that the son was going to be short, they'd probably abort it. And now not everyone would necessarily abort their fetus if it was going to be a short man, but they would still prefer it not to be the fetus who would turn into a short man when it's older. And I said, it's not about killing per se, I'm talking eugenics in general. Again, eugenics isn't just genocide. It can be sterilisation. It can just be stigmatisation, like we're seeing nowadays against short, ugly men. They stigmatise short and or ugly men at any moment given, at any opportunity given. They contrive all these pseudo-studies that, short/ugly men are low IQ and we're more violent and we're more this and we're more unhealthy, and that tall height and good face is a good sign of good health, which it isn't, because I know plenty of actual chads, tall and attractive, good hair, everything, and they are riddled with health problems. Congenital health problems, not health problems they brought on themselves, that they were born with. So again, eugenics isn't just about genociding like these fools are. Anyway, then he gets triggered. These are the same rightoids who accuse everyone of being woke. They're supposedly anti-woke. But here he is, saying, at least you are an honest and consistent degenerate bigot. I will not be replying further. Yeah, I'm a degenerate. The one who thinks someone like Bonnie Blue should have been sterilised is the degenerate. And mind you, I've actually brought that discussion about Bonnie Blue, who's now pregnant up, how she should have been sterilised. And it was all these Christians, and not just Christians. I don't want to just I'm not attacking any religion. I have nothing against Christians, nothing. But, they're usually the pro-life crowd. at least, online. But yeah, it's the same rightoids who always defend such degenerate behaviour, but now I'm the degenerate. Anyway, and after I wrote no argument, coward. But where were the other comments? This same guy reformed to Rome, the OP of the original comment I just read. He wrote, "That's neither eugenics nor my view. This is a stupid hill for your intellect to die on." Okay, if he actually isn't against breeding out short, ugly men and preventing us from reproducing, that's fair. He's not the hypocrite I'm talking about. But you had another guy, this guy here, and he wrote, "No, it is in no way eugenics. It is natural selection." When you bring up the natural selection excuse or justification, the rationalization, I should say, that is eugenics. That's the first thing that eugenicists will rationalize their eugenics stance on natural selection. It's how the natural world works. There's many things that can work in the natural world, but we won't go down that path. And then he wrote, "We can pass laws against women unaliving their own child. Those laws would be morally just. We cannot pass laws against women not wanting to have sex with you. Stop playing the victim card. I have 5-foot-tall male friends who are married with children." So this guy's a gynocentrist. You can pass laws, banning women from maybe not wanting to have sex with short, ugly men, but definitely female promiscuity, which would curb female hypergamy, which is eugenics. And if they're Christians, they should be against female promiscuity, sex before marriage. But they're not. They're really not. They're so defensive of women, and they're so gynocentric that they would never do anything to restrict and regulate women's destructive behaviour. But anyway, I don't want to just make this about women either. And if you got some time to read my comments, do so. This guy, again, typical normie, accusing me of just being angry and reduces it down to the dating market. That's why you can't find anyone. And this same guy here, reformed to Rome, he wrote, "Attraction is not eugenics. No one is killing short men." That is true. Attraction isn't necessarily eugenics. But when you kind of push it and amplify it, and you have hordes of young men, low-tier men, who are deselected simply for not being physically attractive, and you've got hordes of normies, whether they're right, left, centre, Christian, atheist, Muslim, whatever religion or creed, justifying the deselection of such low-tier men, that is eugenics. One way or another, it's eugenics. So I like what this guy here wrote, bperson056. He's one of my subscribers on X. And he wrote, "It's funny how a lot of the so-called trad Nazis and groupers who seem to hate eugenics, are now against, unaliving a defective fetus." Which is true, because they're always crapping on short, ugly men, they're always pedestalizing tall chads as the ideal male, and they're always saying, tall guy, whenever there's a photo of a tall chad, they're always saying, these are the types of men that should be reproducing the most. But now they're against eugenics because a Down syndrome fetus was aborted. But anyway, this guy was the funniest. Just read that comment when you got time. I'm running out of time. And he's denigrating short men, and just, read the whole thread. But then here he says it again, short men are literally less than me by definition. And this guy was upset. He was upset about abortion and being eugenics. He was even criticizing Hitler. But then he's inferiorizing short men. And here's the comment here. He's pro-life, anti-eugenics, Christian, all yada yada.